welcome everybody to another episode of Train Smart. I look forward to this episode. You know, being Memorial Day, it is great to have a fellow individual that's strength and conditioning based, but comes from a military background. So happy to announce John Abbatoy. He is originally from Michigan, and I will let him kind of introduce himself, but he is currently in Point Loma at the university with the athletes. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's living the dream in San Diego right now with the beautiful weather that's probably like 80 or 90 degrees. But welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you, Dane. Again, thanks for setting this up. Thanks for having me, and thanks for putting out just great content all the time. So your page has been nice to follow. I've been appreciating a lot of stuff you put out there, kind of sharing it with some others at times. Originally from Michigan. I guess quick story, how I kind of got into where I am. I went to Western Michigan University to play lacrosse. I was originally doing business there. Realized that wasn't what my passion wasn't where my heart was. Transferred to Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where I'm originally from. Switched to exercise science. For a while, I was part-time, working midnights. Had a big itch to join the service, as you mentioned, and eventually joined the Navy with about 12 to 13 credits left prior to finishing my degree. While I was in, realized that it was not something I wanted career-wise, just something that I needed to do, kind of a step in my life to put me in a different direction. So while I was in, I found a way to still take a couple of the online classes I had left through Eastern Michigan University, was able to do an internship at the Naval Health Research Center, and finish my degree while I was in the service. And something that I was able to do while I was in for majority of the time was work with dolphins. So I was working with marine mammals. They're mine hunting dolphins. I was lucky enough to do that, go to dive school, go to different combat schools, go to a marine mammal training school, so on and so forth. So that was quite a blessing, something I had not anticipated doing, but loved doing. It was a lot of fun. And when I was looking to get out in 2017, I started looking at master's programs for kinesiology, because I knew that my passion was within strength conditioning, as well as kind of the mentorship and being a role model for student athletes, so on and so forth. Came across Point Loma Nazarene, which was right down the street from where I was stationed, and saw that it was a 1-year accelerated course. I was like, okay, this is great. I've been in the service for a decent amount of time. I need to get my foot in the door, and I need to just get through school and get working, so on and so forth. And at the same time, I saw that Dr. Alvar was just then taking a position. Yeah, shout out Dr. Alvar. Vote for him if you have not already. And I saw that he was getting a position there, so I read all up on him, and I was like, this is going to be my guy. Like, this is perfect. This is what I need. He's going to be a great mentor, so on and so forth. So I applied there, went through the interview process, went to school there, started helping out the strength and conditioning coach there, built a good relationship, strong rapport with him, did an internship at Exos throughout my grad program, and then finished up, got hired at both Exos and Point Loma Nazarene University. And I'm actually back in school again at Point Loma Nazarene University for a master's in organizational leadership.
Nice.
But long story short, that's kind of, how I ended up where I am, and what brought me to Point Loma Nazarene.
That's awesome, man. It's beautiful weather out there. What's the weather right now?
Actually, the weather right now is a little gray and a little gloomy. There's a little bit of drizzle this morning, but that's fine because it's supposed to get pretty hot later today, so I'll take it for right now.
I was about to say, here in Michigan right now, it's like pushing about 80, 82 degrees. It's a little overcast, but it's perfect right now. I don't know if you could see, I went out yesterday. I'm a little red.
A little red, yeah. Is it muggy?
No, it's actually, I mean, it's well, maybe a little bit, but not too much.
Okay.
But yeah, man, well, your background's phenomenal. Coming from Michigan, I know it's definitely one of those areas that, the world of strength and conditioning is kind of limited. University settings, great. But when it comes into more of like the private sectors and everything, which, coming from Exos, that's a great place to be. And, coming from Exos myself, a portion of my career, the content that they're developing is always superior. They launch a lot of educational things, and I mean, it's a great thing to see a fellow strength and conditioning coach, but from Michigan, that is now obviously doing great things as well in Point Loma. But I look forward to this episode, man. I mean, I think the topic of developing student athletes should be well known around the middle school area, the high schools, the collegiate setting, and you coming from the collegiate setting, I look forward to your expertise. And you've had a great mentor, man. I mean, Dr. Alvar, if you guys haven't, he's running for president right now for the NSCA. So go get your votes in if you guys are part of the membership organization. But I look forward to this, man. I mean, when it comes to developing student athletes, there's a lot of like hidden secrets that I think many times coaches don't really know too much. But kind of actually I wanted to ask you a question. How long did you serve in the military for?
Just shy of 6 years. So it was originally supposed to be 5, and I ended up needing posterior labral repair on my left shoulder. So I extended for that surgery and then stayed in for the duration of my rehabilitation, and then I got out. So it was about 5.5 years, close to that.
Nice.
All of that time in California, outside of going to different schools in some states, and then a few times we took some trips to Hawaii with the Dolphins to do some training out there.
That's awesome, man. I that's crazy about the whole dolphin things. I saw the pictures and everything on your social media, but I was like, I don't know if that's true or not. Like, it looks like it's real, is it not? But that's awesome. So what was your actual job like with that exactly?
We never ended up deploying. I was actually part of the last active duty platoon to work with the Dolphins.
Okay.
The footprint at this point in time is just so large, and for the fact that we did not need to use them in any kind of war setting because of the kind of the climate that we're in now. We're not anywhere that we're coming off of a shore and we need to like clear an area for Marine Recon to come in behind us or anything. So what we were training them to continuously be able to do is be able to clear lanes off of coasts to know that there's no mines like protecting an area that would keep us from gaining access to a position. So that was what we would do daily, 8 to 12 hours a day working with them and taking them through different fields, as we called them, or areas within San Diego, in bays, out in the open ocean, so on and so forth. We would do different activities where we'd go on ships, on planes, all types of crazy things I never ever imagined doing in my life or even thought was a thing. So
I never knew it was a thing until literally you just said that.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, that's awesome, man. But I mean, having that military background, I would imagine that's always helped someone's career. I think that always kind of pushes you in the right direction on specific things. And I think it's kind of helped you being a strength coach. But, coming from that private sector and also the college setting, there's probably the pros and cons to each one. I've had an internship at the college setting. I've had an internship in private sector, and I've worked in both. But what was more of your favorite part about each one of those areas and environments?
So this is a tough one because I mean, there's a lot of good things, on both sides, both settings. But I think for the private setting, I'll start there, which I'm no longer at Exos. I did leave in December because I was starting the other graduate program and wedding planning, so on and so forth, and things were just getting really busy. So I had to make a sacrifice somewhere, and it was that. However, loved my time there. Still have great relationships with all the coaches and PTs. We hang out. We still get on Zoom calls and help each other out, so on and so forth. But from the private side, I'll go with the training perspective. Not having to deal with care hours, so accountable athletically related activities that those hours you have to deal with on the collegiate side that at times can hamstring what you're wanting to do or hoping to do with the athletes. not having that is nice, because I think it allows us to spend as much time with the clients as they're willing to provide us. And with that, we're able to then kind of specialize in different areas. And then another piece of that is that because these clients are coming to you and paying generally a decent amount of money to be there, motivation usually is not an issue. And you know what they're trying to get, and you can just dial in and focus on that area. And a lot of times on the private side, it's a smaller group, or maybe one-on-ones. There were large teams that we did have at Exos, which were then treated a bit more like a high school strength and conditioning program, or like a collegiate strength and conditioning program. But I think that's something that I really liked on the private side of things. And because it allowed me to kind of open up a different side of what I'm really trying to get proficient at when I'm looking at specializing. And then on the collegiate side, being able to see the athletes so frequently, I really, really love that. Being able to attend practices, games all the time. They'll drop in the office. Maybe they want to come in and volunteer sometime and get an extra like 10 minutes of working on something. I really, really love that. And then just being that additional support system for them to help them grow into better people, better students, better leaders, so on and so forth. That's what really draws me to the collegiate side. And I think that would probably be the same in like a high school setting, though I've never worked directly in a high school setting. But that's really kind of what pulls me towards the college setting.
Absolutely, man. There's so much that goes into it. And I love the fact that you talked about growing an athlete. I mean, I think that's one of those kind of hidden things I was talking about earlier is, a lot of times people always just think that it's that strength coach mentality. All right, let's get into the gym. Let's hammer stuff down. Well, like our jobs are a little bit more than that. It's not necessarily always just about, producing the best performance. It is in the long run, but we're still human. Athletes are still human. We got to think about college athletes. They're going to school. They still have personal stuff that they got to go with. They still got their coaches that they have to basically please on the practice field and the games and tournaments and all of that. And it goes into so much more. I mean, now that we're talking about like the factors and the components that kind of go into general coaching of athletes, there's probably, if I ask like 1,000 different coaches, they're probably all going to have a different answer for this one. But what is like your number one component that you believe like everyone should kind of be tackling when they're working with an athlete?
So I'm going to tackle this from a little bit of a different perspective, potentially of where the question could go. But you might be on the same, your frame of mind might be going the same way as well. So I'm not sure. But as you mentioned, we understand that strength and conditioning coaches, we do our best to reduce risk of injury and increase athleticism by way of improvements in strength and power, movement proficiency, etc. But like we were talking about, again, these are student athletes, students before athletes, and then people before students. So for me, a lot of it is the development of particular like leadership skills or life skills. And for this one, I'm going to go with communication. The ability to communicate well, I think, is the number one component that they should be proficient in. And this is something that ultimately will pay dividends for them both in sport, outside of sport, as they continue on in life to, be dentists or doctors or accountants, other coaches, entrepreneurs, whichever direction they want to go. Communication is key to that organizational success and team success. And I think it's also incredibly important within the realm of sports performance. So I think for me, I'm going to go with communication for the number one component.
Yeah, communication is so key. I mean, that's such a big task that I think a lot of people miss. And I don't even think it's really just coaching in general. I think it's just life in general, honestly. But communication is key. I mean, you hit the dot on just, preparing them for life. It's beyond just being the athlete. Some of them potentially might go on and do professional things within their specific sport, but we know that percentage is pretty low.
Yeah, it's very small.
And then coming from that, it's like, you know, they have to be able to talk to people. And, you know, there's always those different types of personality characteristics that somebody might not necessarily be the full out go-getter of, hey, I want to talk to this person and actually start a conversation. And then you might have the people that talk all the time. You know, they're the ones that are asking the questions, or the ones that are kind of guiding that conversation. But it's so true. Communication is, truthfully, I think, one of the most important things. I mean, you hit the dot on that, man. I mean, it's one of those things that it's like, you know, it's, yeah, we're performance, like you mentioned, you know, we're reducing the amount of injuries, but in the way, how are you can actually get these athletes to do the things that you need them to do? Mm-hmm. Communication. You got to talk to them. You got to show them something. You got to read something. But, you know, when it comes into coaching, you talked about communication, you know, being one of those big things. Now, just kind of looking at the broad perspective of athletes, coaches, you know, when we are trying to get them to do a specific program, what do you think is like the number one thing, or just one of those missing components that many coaches kind of forget about when they are trying to prepare their athletes for a specific event or for their sport?
I think I can kind of stay along the same ideology of where I was going with that previous question. And so with me, like working in the collegiate setting, and then, you know, obviously with the divisions that you're dealing with, as we mentioned, the likelihood of these athletes, even at a high-end D1 universities, is still pretty low that they're going to go on and play professionally. And obviously some do, some go overseas, and what have you, but that's still not the norm. That's not the standard. So I still am looking at the side of things that are both going to benefit them as individuals, as they move on in life to go into their professions, and something that will still help them within their sport. So for this, I think it's still so important to continue developing their life skills. And this one kind of ties into communication and showing people where they can lead and where they can add value to the team's culture, the team's DNA outside of just the X's and the O's, right? So this, again, will benefit them as people, as athletes. And I don't know if it's something that coaches generally miss, but this is, I think, some of the literature that I've read suggests that as a whole, we could do better with this. And I think a good place to start for that is, as coaches, and, you know, not just strength and conditioning coaches, but just coaches broadly, it just comes down to recognizing who your formal leaders are and who your informal leaders are. And, you know, formal being captains, and informal leaders being maybe your motivational leaders, your external leaders, your social leaders. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit. And when you can figure out and tease out like who in the team fits these categories, a lot of times that can lead to higher team confidence, a stronger team identification, and just ultimately enhances the culture. And we know a lot of times culture is everything, right? It can, as I believe Brett Bartholomew, he said this from one of the pieces of literature that he was looking at, but essentially, like, you know, culture is built in just drops of water over time, but it can be degraded so quickly, like it could just be poured out, right? So it's such an important piece. And I think every coach across an organization, you've got your strength and conditioning coaches, your assistants, your head coaches for the team, like we all have a piece in maintaining that culture and establishing that. And I think a part of that is just letting the athletes know where they fit in that puzzle and what they can bring to the table. Because you don't want, everyone has something to offer. Like leaders aren't born, leaders are made, and not everyone wants to be a leader. Not everyone wants that, to be put into that position, but they can still bring something and they still have something to offer. So like what I mentioned with the task leaders, which are generally your captains, or your motivational leaders, your social leaders, external leaders, task leaders, like they'll provide tactical instruction. So a lot of times they're telling you where you need to be, what you need to be doing, especially when we're on the pitch or on the court, within the game. And then motivational leaders do they are what it sounds like. They're motivating you on the field. They're the ones that are really uplifting and keep everyone together in the sport. And you can see it in the weight room, the ones that are really like, let's go, like hyping their teammates up, supporting their teammates. And then we all know those people that are like those social leaders that are really good at just kind of keeping that group cohesion. They don't like the drama. They do what they can to squash that. And that's, really important to have in a team. And then you have your external leaders that are good at approaching the coaches, the athletic department, sponsors, like whoever. They're really good at kind of getting outside of the team's box and discussing things with outside individuals. And I think just when you're working with your athletes and you're able to see, who kind of fits where, and then start to strengthen that, and start to show them how they can benefit the team in a different way. And even those that are just like, I lead by example, like those types, just really understanding what your athletes are all about and then helping them continuously get stronger within how they like to lead is just going to pay dividends, I think, for the team within the sport, and then for them as people as they move on in their life.
Absolutely, man. I love that you just talked about like the informal and formal. That is so critical, basically defining a team and understanding who is who in each one of those. I mean, that's team within the coaching side, and then team within the actual athlete side is understanding like, who's going to be that motivator, who's going to be the person that's kind of like that leader of everybody, that's always going to keep everyone in check, everyone organized, everyone's going to be structured, and it's pinpointing that. And sometimes it's the communication with the coach. Like, as you said, like the head coach be like, hey, who is this person? Who is this person? Who is this person? That's going to help guide that program, man. I mean, that is truthfully, if you were to like give a tip for anybody trying to like, what would be like the first step of that? Like if you're actually like say a new coach or just someone working with a brand new team or something, like, hey, John, I need you to come over to lacrosse this time. I know you've been doing baseball for a while, but we're going to come over. Like, what would be like your first recommendation, like right off the bat, to kind of help build that path that you just mentioned?
A lot of it is relationship building, right? And you need to have that relationship with the team as a whole, coach and team, and then you need to have those individual relationships. And I think that's where you learn so much, is from really establishing true, genuine relationships and bonds with your athletes. And this isn't just, it should be more than just, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I think genuinely caring, like I'm a servant-based leader. That's just naturally like where I fit. I love my student athletes, and I think when they feel that, when they sense that you genuinely care about not just them lifting X weight, but what they're studying, what they're hoping to do with their lives, they begin to really trust you that much more, and you can really start to see who they are as people. So I think that is super important, is just building those real relationships. And then sometimes just stepping to the side and just watching how the team operates, almost like you were a fly on the wall, and start to see like who naturally wants to fit in where and what they want to do. Who are maybe the extroverts? Who are the introverts? How do they prefer to lead or prefer to be taught? And then note taking. So like, I think it's big to take notes at the end of sessions and just jot down. It can be relevant to the program specifically, or it can be relevant to like how athletes interact or how the interaction you had with them went, so on and so forth. So I don't know that I really hit you with one thing.
Oh, you did. That's
roundabout.
Perfect. But no, man, that's honestly what you just said was perfect. Like, I love the fact that you just said real. Like, that's a big thing that we kind of push here at Linked Fit, is talk about like real. And we kind of have the first one as we talk about relationships. Whatever environment that you are in, you have to be a real coach. Like, building relationships should be the first thing that you have to go right from the get-go. And I love that. It's like, truthfully, like, you won't do well in a job or any place if you're just going to be the person that's kind of just in the back corner, not really doing too much. Like, you got to build those relationships. You got to get to know your athletes. Like, your athletes truthfully won't like working with you if you're just gonna be like, all right, push-ups,
Yeah.
all right, bench press.
Yeah.
But no, it's like, ask them, like you mentioned, like, what are they studying? Potentially getting to know them a little bit more. And then potentially they might listen a little bit more. And then they're probably gonna be the person that actually goes to you for advice. And
Yeah.
that is gold on my case.
Yep.
But man,
100%.
it's been so superior on all these recommendations. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I mean, we could probably go into conversations like this for a long time, but I think for right now, in terms of what we talked on, I'm pretty content with where we went with it. I do want to say that it's been great being at Point Loma and working with Eric Pedersen. So he's the head strength and conditioning coach there, and I think just from the beginning, the rapport we've had, the way that we've been able to kind of change the dynamic of strength and conditioning at that college has been fantastic. The athletes weren't quite sold on strength conditioning prior to his arrival. So he was there alone for the first year. I helped him a little bit during my stint as a graduate student, and just the swing of the pendulum of coaches respecting strength conditioning there and the athletes wanting to go do it has been just phenomenal. So he's been great in that way, and so I wanted to give him a little bit of love. And
Absolutely.
Our grad assistant Trevor Abshire, this is his first year. Unfortunately, it's been cut quite short, because of everything that's going on. So we've been doing a lot of online education with him and our intern Ian Laventure, who's also been a big help there. So it takes a whole lot of people to get some work done. So I wanted to give them some love too, because none of us are doing things by ourselves. Even when you're the lone coach somewhere, you still got a support system that's helping you out in some capacity. So give them some love too.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, you got to have a good team. I mean, like you mentioned, you're not alone. If you are fortunate, I mean, I know some universities and I know some coaches that are legitimately the only coaches or the only coach in that area. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got a great team, man. I mean, that's like the biggest thing is having those relationships, not necessarily just with the athletes, but you got to have those relationships with your coaches and your fellow teammates so that you can now brainstorm specific new things and how you're going to approach the new team coming in or the new freshmen that are coming in. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and always continue to learn. I mean, as you mentioned with like the grad assistant and the intern, that's kind of their realm right now, is to continue to learn their path of being a strength coach, potentially where they want to be in the future. But one thing I want to actually finish up with is, if anyone wants to get in contact with you to basically kind of talk about this, like, what would be the best way to contact you?
Instagram or email, to be honest. So do you want to post that with this, or do you want me just to spell it out?
It is, if you want to spell it out, you can spell it out. It's up to you.
Well, email is pretty easy. It's johnabbatoy@gmail.com. So JohnAbbatoy@gmail.com. And Instagram handle John Abbatoy _coach.
That's pretty simple.
Either of those. Yeah, pretty simple. I recently changed it. It was a little more complicated. Prior to, it was in memory of DA, but most people didn't quite know how to pronounce it when they just looked at the letters. They were like, what are these random letters? But it's just something that I've had since 2003 when my dad passed away. So it's been a username for many, many years, and just recently shifted that. But yeah, no, this has been great. It's a random aside. I spent this last week and a bit, just with this podcast in mind, kind of looking forward to it. And it's been great because middle of last week or early last week, my fiance and I had to postpone our wedding like many other couples.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I spent, last week just, eating pizza, and doing those things. And now this is like that thing that I was looking forward to. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to be a great time. And then I'm going to get right back into where my routine was, and get back into everything. So yeah, this has been great. I've loved it. And thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, man, for being a guest on Train Smart. I look forward to our future conversations and everything like that. Again, you guys, strength coaches, are doing an amazing job around the world, just keeping all of your athletes engaged. If you guys have any questions for John or myself, feel free to reach out to us. But take it easy, John. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. Will do.
See ya.
Take it easy.